When my brother Joe moved to Tetonia, Idaho, my pa, Charles Gustaveson, went to visit him and go fishing on the Teton River. A remarkable incident happened on one visit. Pa's prayer wasn't answered, but his life was saved. The river where they went to fish ran down through the lava rocks many feet below the surface of the surrounding country. There were steep trails leading down to the banks in certain places, and unless used, it was practically impossible to descend to the river. They fished down the river, but Pa stayed near the trail at first, but gradually went up the stream as he fished. In places, the brush on the sides was very hard to pass or to get around, but with fisherman's interest, Pa went quite a distance before he realized he was getting extremely tired and the sun was very hot. He decided he would go back up the trail and wait for the men in his white top buggy. He soon found it practically impossible to retrace his steps now that the lure of fishing was over, so he began scanning the walls for a place to ascend. He saw steep, rocky, willow-covered banks, except in a place that was a mass of bare rocks, large and small, that looked easier to climb than to go through the brush and rocks elsewhere. So he started to climb, but the rocks were very hot and rugged. The sun was out and became so hot that Father couldn't even stop long enough to rest a little. He prayed for strength and that a cloud would pass beneath the hot sun so that he could reach the top, or at least get over those awfully hot rocks. He was surprised that no cloud floated beneath the sun, although there was a small one that he knew his father couldn't cause to do so. Pa prayed again with his usual faith and wondered why his prayers were not answered, when the Lord had most always answered his prayers. And this request seemed so simple, yet so very much needed. He was about 2/3 of the way across those awful lava rocks when he felt utterly exhausted. As he attempted to rest, something urged him on. He felt he must not stop, even though he was an old man and very tired. When he finally reached the top of the steep climb, he found a flat, fairly level field. He dropped, exhausted, in the short grass to rest while he gained enough energy to go farther to seek shade. As he lay there, panting and trying to shield his face from the sun, a man's voice asked him for the time. He looked up surprised, for he had seen no one a second before when he reached the top. There stood an old man smiling at him. Without comment, he looked at his watch and repeated what it said, and at the same time realized that he had heard the man talk, though he had been stone deaf for years. He looked back to the man whom had been standing over him, but the man was no longer there. He was no longer in sight either, and there were no trees or other objects behind which a person could hide. Pa even looked down over the steep hill he had just climbed, but no one was in sight. He felt that the visitor must have been an angel, but he couldn't understand why he had come. He knew, too, that they didn't need to ask what time it was. Later, when he informed his son and the others of the party that he had climbed that rocky cliff, his son said, "You crossed the biggest rattlesnake den in this country. The only reason you're alive is because the sun had heated the rocks so hot that the snakes had crawled down the cracks for protection from the heat. Literally hundreds of snakes lived in those rocks." Now it was all clear to Pa. If he had sat down to rest, or if a cloud had come over the area to shade him, the snakes would have come from the holes and cracks, and he would have been bitten. He felt that an angel had been permitted to come to urge him on, so that he didn't cast a shadow long enough in one place to cool the rocks, and that the only reason he asked for the time was to let Pa know he had been